So,
away.
Mr. Seller, if we're on the market and we have no showings in the first 2 weeks,
There should be no reason not to sell.
you still have kids and life and work, and then you're trying to pack up your house.
You know, when people try to buy houses, a lot of times they think they have to have a certain down payment. Tell me a little bit about what a loan officer is going to expect from a buyer and what a down payment would actually look like. What are some of the programs that are available to buyers out there these days?
You know, it surprises me a little bit how many people still think that they need 20% down.
Yeah.
So a lot of conversations are like, well, we're trying to save money for the down payment. So it's exciting when we could say, did you know you could go as low as 3%? And you probably, so it really is dependent on their financial situation in general. So the snapshot we'll get is when they take the loan application, which a lot of people are hesitant to do, but really there's nothing we could do until we have that. Yeah, we need that. So it dings your credit a little bit, but I'd rather have a little bit of a ding and know where I'm going, how I can help you, what we're doing. And it's going to give you some clarity too around budget, around your loan options, 15-year, 30-year, how much down payment, what your mortgage payment is going to look like. And now insurance is a big deal. So you want to kind of lay out your numbers up front before you start looking. So you know a specific area or some houses. But 3.5%, 5%, we can go 100% financing depending on the area, depending on the borrower. So there's a lot of different options, and 20%, that's a good thing for you if you want to avoid mortgage insurance, if you want to kind of have that knocked off, but you also don't need that. I would rather hold on to some of your cash and make those payments until you can.
Well, what happens in addition to a down payment? Say you settle on an FHA loan, you have to come up with 3.5% down. What other fees does a buyer need to be aware of that may show up? Maybe cash on hand or other ways to get down closing cost assistance, things like that.
Yeah. So the first thing is, let's just say we're doing a 3.5% FHA loan. Rule of thumb is another 3 to 4% maybe for closing costs. And that's going to include your real estate taxes, some fees associated with your loan, some title work and all that stuff. So that's going to be part of it, maybe 3% additional for you to have.
Of the sales price.
Of the sales price, correct. So it's a, $200,000 house, you're going to need 3.5% down and then an additional 3% for your closing costs. Okay. Now, out of pocket, we're going to need to do our homework on the house and try to go through our inspections. So you want to make sure never, ever, ever skip that part. So that's money well spent, your due diligence and doing all your homework on that.
And what do those usually cost?
Depends on the size of the house, but typically, so a regular house, 200,000, let's just say it's 16 to 1,800 square feet. You're looking at 350, maybe 400. And if it has additional structures, if it has a pool, if you want plumbing, so all those things add on. But the base, from a general perspective, you're going to get that. And then anything that comes up with the house, we can have it looked at further by, an HVAC specialist or AC specialist or a roofer, things like that would tack on. And then you have to pay for your appraisal as well. And that's going to be, those are two options that you have to pay and they're not refundable. So those are things right off the bat. And then a deposit for you to have. That's going to come, that's part of your down payment. So you'll have that money on hand anyway. It's just you're putting it up front, good faith deposit, and then it comes back to you at closing.
Well, tell me, for example, someone qualifies for 100% financing with rural development, or they're a former military person and they have a VA loan, yet they don't want to come out of pocket anything other than those two fees, the inspection fee and the appraisal fee.
Yeah.
Are there ways to negotiate a sale to where somebody could essentially come to the table with absolutely no money and purchase a house?
Well, that's the exciting part about the shift in the market right now is that sellers are willing to make those concessions. It was really hard, 6 months, a year ago, trying to get sellers to give you that, but they can offset that and we can wrap it into your loan. So essentially, you want to offer, still another example, $200,000. We offer the full price on that house, but we make that in there clear in the contract that we would like the seller to offset $5,000 of those concessions. And that comes back to you at closing off of what you owe, and it helps you. So you're really rolling it into your loan and paying it over 30 years instead of coming out of pocket, which is a great option for buyers.
A lot of people have great credit. They've paid all their bills, but they don't have a lot of cash on hand. So
Correct.
That's an option that we can negotiate.
Even if you have cash on hand, I always recommend just rolling it into your loan and keeping that cash. As you move into a house, a lot of things come up. You need new furniture, you need paint, you need whatever it is, the moving expenses are there. So it's nice to have that cash on hand, and the rest of it gets rolled in if the seller is willing, which right now they are a little bit more willing.
Okay, sounds good.
Is this a good time to sell a house?
Believe it or not, the market has softened. I'm sure everybody out there has heard that it is shifting to more of a balanced market. That's meaning there's about 4 to 6 months of inventory available out there in pretty much all price ranges, say under $1 million or less in our local area, the greater New Orleans area. But what you really need to focus on is supply and demand. That usually dictates everything. And the supply is still abnormally low. Even though interest rates have creeped up, homeowners insurance rates have creeped up, there are still buyers that have to be out there looking, and they have to buy. I think in every real estate market, there's an opportunity, but with this abnormally low inventory out there, there's not a lot of properties available. So if the buyers are looking and they're comfortable with a 6.5% interest rate, which we're hoping is going to come down over the next several months, and some of these issues with homeowners insurance are trying to be corrected at the state level, there should be no reason not to sell. Now, you will have to be a little bit more flexible with your negotiation. You may have to come down off your list price. We're not selling houses over list price currently. And sometimes you may have to give up some concessions for closing cost or a home warranty or a termite contract, things of that nature. But for the most part, houses are still moving. There's less than 4 to 6 months of inventory available out there. And if you're motivated to sell, prices are still relatively high. We haven't seen a crash in the market where the market prices have come down drastically like we did back in 2008, 2009 time frame. It's just a different dynamic, but it's more of a balanced dynamic of what we're more accustomed to in the New Orleans area. The general public thinks real estate sales is like the traditional sales style. You have a product, you sell the product. It's not necessarily the case. It is still sales, but it's also a customer service and you're hiring a buyer's agent or an agent for their bandwidth of their extended team, their track record of going through a process and holding someone's hand so there's no issues around that. You're essentially going to find your house. You can find them online.
So basically, I would hope that when I get hired to represent somebody in a buyer side transaction or even the seller side, that I'm not being hired because I can show them houses. Like that is probably, if it's a skill set, probably my least qualified skill set, if you want to call it that. Like I could take you to a house and I could open the door and let you in. But as far as if you want me to sell you on the house, that is not going to happen. My taste is my taste. Your taste is your taste. And it's not like I have a book of listings. I may have a pocket listing or two with the team, but I don't have a book of listings that I'm holding on to that only I can show you. And you're coming to me for that advantage. You're probably, buyers right now have as much access as we do. You probably are going to find the house first. You're going to call me to go show you that property.
Right.
So where my skill set kicks in, or what I do is the negotiation part. Like from that point on is really what you need me for. We're going to negotiate the price, obviously, make sure the comps are justifiable, the price is justifiable. We're going to get inspections done, all the inspections you might need, any red flags that are there. I'm going to be aware of those. It's not always red flags where you have to cancel out to. You can make those repairs. So just that and getting to appraisal, that gets sticky, making sure you're with the right vendors, like a reputable title company, a really good lender, getting you all the way through, which is, so finding the house, like, I don't know, it depends on the time, but it could be 5% of what I do. The rest of it is taking you from contract all the way to closing and then some, because we still get calls from, hey, I need the roofer's number that changed the roof. The tiles are coming out. I need my warranty. Or, we have all that information. So the agent's job is not necessarily for them to find, you might go to an open house and find your own house. You might call a for sale by owner and find your own house, but you need an agent to represent you through it from that contract to close part, because that's where the actual sale happens. It's not the property or the inventory that's available right now.
So that's really where you earn your money.
That's where we earn the money. That's what the commission is for.
After the buyer falls in love with the property, the commission's actually earned from the next 95% of the
Absolutely.
transaction.
You don't even need me to show you the house. Honestly, you can, you could go to the open house and see the house. From that point forward, though, you need your agent, and not just falling into whatever agent is there. You need somebody who has your interest at heart, first of all, but also knows your goals, who knows your finances, who knows, do you have closing costs available? Do you want to use that? Do you know your lender? Do you know the area? Do you have money for flood insurance? Like all those things that I would have already built into our relationship, that I would have taken time to get to know your proper situation, your family. Then I get you to the closing table, because it is, if you have a hard time with or not even a close relationship with your buyer's agent, from that contract to close, it could be very difficult to get you through it. It's very emotional. It could put a strain on your life because you still have kids and life and work and everything else happening on the side. And then you're trying to pack up your house and you're trying to move. And so all of these things, you need somebody who's actually working for you. Like that is a real,
like sort of in the trenches with you.
Absolutely. That is a real relationship that has to be established for you to be able to get through to it, to the other side.
Well, anytime I receive an offer on a property, we put a seller net sheet together, so the seller essentially knows within a couple $100 what they're going to walk away from the table with. The worst thing in the world is for a seller to show up to a closing table and not receive the check that they think they're going to get. Typical seller's closing costs are only about $300 to $500. Those are fees that the seller has to pay on their own behalf, and that's to do the title work, for the attorney to show up and put all the paperwork together and close out any mortgages or any title issues that need to be addressed. So really, it's only $300 to $500. Where a lot of sellers get caught up in the transaction, I'm not going to pay closing costs. I've heard that a million times over my 20-year career. It's not really about paying closing costs. It's ultimately about what you're going to net and walk away from the table with. And right now, more so than the last 3 to 5 years, sellers are going to have to be more open to paying buyers concessions towards closing costs. That's for their taxes, their insurance, their lender's fees. It's very important for the seller to understand it doesn't really matter how you're structuring a contract, what type of terms and conditions you're putting together in that contract. It ultimately just means, what are you going to walk away from the table with? And if we can get that same buyer to the closing table and assist them in some way, and you get what you want and they get what they want, which is called a win-win transaction, it is a tremendous benefit for all parties involved. We have a thing on our team, it's win-win or no deal. And if it's a situation where we can't make it a win-win for both parties, we move on to the next transaction or find another buyer in that circumstance. But yes, right now, the typical seller's closing cost, $300 to $500. That doesn't change. But from a seller's perspective and concessions giving up, those are something they're going to have to be more open to doing. And as long as we can net the seller what they need to net and they can walk away with the amount of money they need to go to their next goal or next stage in life, it's still a win for all parties involved.
Do all heirs have to agree to sell a property?
So an executor is usually in charge, but sometimes other heirs are involved and we have to get additional signatures. We sort of leave that up to the title company to tell us. Once we know we're dealing with the executor of an estate, that's who we're dealing with primarily. And sometimes when they do a little additional title work and some of the legal language in that abstract comes back saying that we have to have additional heirs sign off on things, we just simply have those other heirs sign off on it. But typically there's one person that's in charge when there's multiple heirs. And certainly in Louisiana with successions and things of that nature, which I actually specialize in succession and have a designation to handle probate and succession sales, I sort of lean on my title companies for that additional information when putting a contract together. So we may put an initial contract between a buyer and an executor of an estate. They all sign off on it, and the title company says, no, we have to have additional heirs sign off on it. We just reach out to them and have them go ahead and sign off on it so we can proceed to the act of sale. Sort of once the house goes under contract, the next big negotiation is the inspection response. And tell me how that all plays out. Can a buyer receive their deposit back? Can they cancel and not have any penalty? And then what does the inspection period actually look like, and what does that entail?
So I always tell buyers that there's almost like a 2-point, sometimes 3 if the appraisal has issues too, negotiation with the property. Yeah. The first step is obviously the price and the terms. The second step that I always say it's like a 2-point negotiation is the inspections. That's an issue all of in it, wrapped up in itself. And sometimes it can be easy and you know the issues just from looking at the house. If it's a newer home, there aren't going to be a lot of issues. You can just tell. But sometimes you can't tell what's going on with the property, and we get these reports. The reports, and they should be very detailed, sometimes can be overwhelming and a little scary. So the importance of us working with buyers and inspectors that we know, like I know the inspector knows what he's doing. I know he's going to find things. And I know when he finds things, if he says it's not a big deal, these are the fixes, I can trust and rely on that. Or if he says, Nicole, that's a red flag, then I know to tell my buyer that, because those are issues that you don't want to move forward with an issue like that on a property.
What are a couple of red flag issues? What are major concerns that would come up in an inspection that we would ask a seller to address?
The major concerns that come up that are hard for sellers to like this is not something you expected when you're selling your house.
Mm.
A big roof issue, something wrong with your foundation, something with the plumbing. We have a lot of polybutylene piping that
Yeah,
comes up, and
right.
that's a big issue. You can't get any insurance on that. Electrical panels, things that are outdated, and sometimes outdated, it's not to bring it up to code necessarily. It's just that they're done wrong, or they're just not going to work
Like a
right,
safety
cause a
concern.
safety issue,
Mhm.
some fire hazards or whatever that may be. So issues like that with properties are hard to negotiate, and it's going to take a willing seller and everybody that's willing to work toward a resolution, and not just I'm not doing it, you're not doing it. Those things can get a little tricky. So you need to have an open mind when it comes to your inspections. Like, the house isn't yours yet until we've made it through all the hurdles. This is
Mhm.
one of the hurdles that, yes, you have to commit to. Do you want the house enough? Because we agreed to the terms, but also you got to go through it and talk with the sellers. Get a reputable inspector that knows what they're doing. Talk with the inspector. You don't need to be there for the whole inspection. That I don't advise. Sometimes, I mean, it could be a 3 to 4 hour process. But the last hour to half hour, I always tell my buyers to go to the property, walk the property with the inspector. First of all, so you can have contact with them in a face-to-face.
Mhm.
And then when you review the report after we receive it, you can contact that inspector and you go through the issues. And then it's a comfort level too. My comfort level with issue, what a red flag to me is probably, if you have a roofer in your family, that's not a big deal for you. You can take care of some issues, or so things that is always a variable. But you have to be aware that when the inspection is going on or when it's happening, there might be things on there that are red flags, and there might be things that are just not that big a deal, and it's normal, regular wear and tear on a property.
So you get a list of items together that are red flags for a buyer, that would give concern or pause for them to move forward on the transaction. What would the next stage look like once you put a property inspection response together? What would be some type of responses that a seller would give you on those 5, 6 major items?
I like to try to get the seller an idea. So if there is a big item that shows up, I like to get the specialist in. So if it's a roof issue, I get a roofer. If it's an electrical issue, I get an electrician, so that we can have at least a quote or we get some number to it. Because what happens is buyers overinflate. It's going to be a $10,000 repair, and sometimes it's not that much. Or the seller is willing to give you $1,500 on a $5,000 repair. So it's always great to have. And I'm not saying they have to use our licensed person, but they can get their own, and then we meet somewhere in the middle. So that's always one thing. I prefer also to have the repairs made by the seller, because sometimes you get quotes, and then the repairs come in, they open it up, and then there's a lot more that goes into it, and now the buyer's on the hook for those repairs. So we can negotiate repairs based on only if we have a licensed technician person out there to take a look at it and give us a quote on there, that it's going to be where the seller can actually take that and have a legit factual number that they can decide whether they want to do it or not.
Okay, so the seller can do what? They can say they're going to fix all the items. A licensed person would fix them
so
all.
When we get those inspection responses, the 3 options for a buyer is, no way, this is way too much, I'm not interested, I'm out of here. Like, just no, right off the bat. So then we send the cancellation. You get your deposit back. Now, you did forfeit the cost of that inspection, but I believe that that's money well spent if the issues are so great that you don't want to move into this property. The second, which is the most common, is we'll submit a list of items to the seller. And we try to go those big ticket items, because if we give him a list of 20 items, he's going to select 15 of the easiest things, and then you're stuck with the rest. So we'll go with the big ticket items: roofing, plumbing, termite is big here. So if there's any termite issues, things like that, that the seller would have to take on, we write that out, tell them what we want as far as repairs, be as detailed as possible, so there's no gray areas or anything open for them to kind of consider on their own. So we give that. And then the third option is they give us money in lieu of repairs. We get those quotes, we agree on a price, and they bring that back.
And where can that money go towards? What type of thing? Say they offer $5,000 in lieu of all repairs. The buyer agrees to that, and what would that money? There's several options there, isn't there?
A lot of sellers like to offer that off the sales price. So we're gonna, we were at 200,000, we come down to 195. I don't like for the buyers to agree to that necessarily, because it doesn't give them any cash on hand to address those repairs when they move in. So yes, it's dropping your sales price, your loan value, your loan amount, but it's really not giving you any access to any additional funds to do those repairs. So it's better to put money either at a title company to keep that in an escrow account, and then you can have access to those repairs. Or, like I said, for the seller to just go ahead and make those repairs for you, so that you don't have to deal with it when you move into the property.
Okay. All right. That all makes sense.
How long does it take, do you think, to become a real estate agent in Louisiana?
It is unfortunately a very low bar to become a real estate agent in the state of Louisiana, and pretty much a real estate agent, period. I think back in 2005, when I got my real estate license, I went to a school on the South Shore in New Orleans called Donaldson. I took a 2-week crash course, and then 2 weeks later, I took the test. So within a month's time, I had paid my fees. I was a licensed
Wow.
realtor, and
Now
I
you
had
can
hung
sell
my
my
license
house.
at Keller Williams, and now all of a sudden I can sell
You
a
can sell
house.
my house.
This is a tag for exactly why it is imperative that you interview realtors and get a clear understanding of who you're dealing with, because you're hiring somebody to deal with quite possibly, most likely, the largest asset in your personal portfolio. These houses are 3, 4, 5, $600 million homes, and a lot of it is equity. And you have somebody that, quite frankly, could get their real estate license, pay $1,000, and be a licensed realtor dealing with these assets. I think it is very important that you make sure you hire an agent that deals in high volume, at least sells several houses a month, that does this on a full-time basis and has a clear understanding on how to deal with real estate. Certainly, we like new realtors to come in the business because sometimes these realtors do learn what they're supposed to do over time, and they do plug in and
The
become
mentorship or
with a
team.
mentorship or a team like we run, and they can learn over time on how to become a very qualified realtor. But if at the very least, don't I'm not going to say don't hire somebody right out of school, but at least make sure if you do hire somebody that's newer in the business, maybe with less than a year of experience, with less than 5 or 6 transactions under their belt, that they're being mentored properly or on a team with other realtors that do a lot of business, or have somebody holding their hand every step of the way. Sure, you want to help your buddy out, or your aunt or your uncle or whoever has a license to earn a commission. That's fantastic. But you need to make sure the right person overall is overseeing everything and making sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed properly. Or you can get yourself into hot water, ruin a relationship with a friend, or
Financial devastation. I mean,
a
those
financial
things yeah.
devastation, or just a mistake that'll get you in some type of litigation that you don't want to be involved in.
Yeah.
From a perspective of the dynamics of the two of us and how we run a team, and what your role in our place organization looks like. I mean, you're very much still on the sales side, and you do work with past clients and referrals and things like that. You still sell a handful of houses, but you're running the administrative staff to give the rest of our sales staff additional leverage.
So when we decided, or when we, even before place, a few years ago when we had the team, we had decided that it was a team of specialists. So we had the admin staff, then we had buyer's agent, and then we had listing agents, and everybody was going to get really good at their one thing to get, and so the idea was to take all of the unnecessary, I guess, the air leaks out of where your focus would go, so that you can stay in flow and do better at your real estate sales, right? To learn that really well, to protect people, and to just do better at it. So this time around, when we decided to do the team, we're like, you know what? We probably just need full agents. They need to be the whole scope of real estate. They need to know, but the administrative side, even though most agents, if you ask maybe 80%, 90% of agents, what they detest the most or what they struggle the most with is paperwork on the side, or just the details of the transaction. So those, 100, 200 little baby tasks that it takes to get you from start to close. So I learned when I first got in the business, and it just so happens that, your brain goes really, your sales and mine goes really details. So I first heard is, if you catch yourself in your transactions or in your business doing the same thing more than 2 or 3 times, you need to put a system around it. Catch it right up front, so then it doesn't become a thing where you have to reinvent the whole transaction. So I started doing that. And with the team, even, in the beginning, I would do that with my own files. Everything looked the same. Everything had the same process. No matter what file it was, I knew what was going on where, and it was just a structured, almost like I'm moving it down a chain to get it to the closing table. There were issues along the process, but still, it was like, when this is done, we go here. When this is done, we go here. So within the team, knowing that my skill set, or where I guess I thrive, is seeing those processes and making sure it goes down the line straight, making sure we could do that at a high level for the agents. So everything we do now is almost automated. We put a strong automation around it. Pretty much the agent gets it. There's a way or a process for them to submit the file. It gets submitted, and then from there, it's a chain reaction of events that happen for it to get to closing. Every single process is the same. The seller gets the same behaviors, the agent gets the same behaviors, the marketing gets, everything gets to, because we know it's been, the way we found it, it was tried and true. If it works for one, and we found these with the highest agents. It's not like I got these processes from,
These
I
are
was
people
like,
that are doing 2 or
who's
3
selling
times
all
the
the
amount of
houses?
business
What are
that
they
we
doing?
do.
Okay, we're going to
Right.
do that.
Yeah.
Oh, who's doing all the automation? Okay, we're going to do that. What's the social media thing? We're doing that. And so we get the highest of the highest levels of these processes. And then I put it on these systems in these boxes. And it's really a long checklist. And now we have, even within the admin staff. So the way we took the role with agents, and you were a listing agent in this, and even the admin, you only do transactions. Your job is to pay attention to every single detail from when you receive that contract to get it to close. Your job is to, when the listing comes into you, is to make sure you highlight the property, you input it correctly, you make sure all the pieces are in place, the pictures are set, the measurements are correct, there's no errors on that end. And then the final person is, you're going to help me, now that it's listed, how can we showcase this property and help the seller make it into the competition? How can we highlight this property? And so it takes a lot of research to get those high level pieces, because you could just put it in together. But for the volume that we do, and for the experience that we have, we've known the stuff that doesn't work, the stuff that does work. And it really is kind of, you keep trimming off the fat of things that you don't need to be doing. The idea is that you get a process that makes sense and it is proven that it's going to work. And then we just plug the sellers in there, and they also have access to all that to see that. And they should be able to follow along the transaction and see, this is getting done for me, this is not getting done for me. And it has been, there are issues that come through, but the more we specialize those areas, every part of the transaction, the more bulletproofing we've had with getting the property sold.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about our staff, who we hired in the last 6 months, and what it looks like moving forward for our scalability and getting, to the point where we're selling 300 to 500, 600 homes a year.
So it starts with the listing manager. That's where, if we're talking for listings, there's different sides of it. But if you're going to listing, the listing manager. And so, it was getting on the calls with her and the trainings with her and making sure for the basic of it, because they don't always know real estate. They don't know real estate. They know administrative work. So the basics of it was, we sat down and we would just, Google. We had a house. Do you know what a raised house looks like? Do you know the difference? And they're like, not necessarily. So we Google raised houses, all these pictures. And if anything looks like this, then, because they have to write the descriptions, they have to know the properties, they have to send the proper photographer with the measurements and all these things. So if you don't know real estate, she doesn't have to know the real estate transaction, but you need to know a little bit about real estate and what it looks like, and what, if we need measurements, if you don't have them, then what do? You call the appraiser. And when the appraiser gets you back the sketch, what do you do with that? And what does the seller need? If he has flood insurance, we need to make sure they get that. And we have to guide the sellers to go back and get those elevation certificates. And so it's teaching them all this real estate jargon without them having to be licensed necessarily.
Yeah, right.
So that was kind of fun, actually, to go through that process, teaching somebody just without the worry, basics, without the worries of anything. Like, all I'm going to teach you is, when you look at a house and the pictures, how can you, what verbiage can we put together to highlight it for the description? What input is important? What mistakes can you avoid? How can we reach out to the seller and ask them, what can we deliver? What are you expecting from the transaction? Every seller has different expectations. So it was making sure that listing manager really did work for the sellers from the point forward. And they work with the agent. The agent's involved every step of the way.
Yeah. They're just leverage for the agent, so the
Absolutely.
agent can go find more buyers for their sellers.
I don't necessarily want you sitting there inputting your MLS listings. I think I would rather you have
You're not going to do a good job at it anyway.
Talking to the other agents about it. I want you to do the selling part, and then the transactional part, or the input part, needs to be done by somebody who's really, really good at it. She's really, virtual staging, she is phenomenal. Like, all these things that help you sell the property, making sure she's at the top of her game doing that. And we have the same thing with a transaction coordinator. So it started with, let's just do a few transactions, and then we put systems around it. So he wrote them down. What are the steps that he does? And we got a generic sort of, it's called auto plan, but we put it all together for what can we make sure, what needs to be checked off every list for every transaction. So that was like a generic one. And then we added in what we do additionally for them. so that we can customize it to the team, but we can also make sure that the sellers get the highest level of customer service. There was a lot of moving pieces once that contract is under, you have to touch base with the lender and the title company and the other agent and your agent and the seller and so there's a lot of things that it's a checklist, and it is a very, very detailed checklist that I think was it 180 steps they say that, so those are things that it goes from like start to finish, and he does it every single time. It attaches to the file, and you have to check it. It's all automated now, so it's online. It's not, we used to have, which worked well,
that old
paper.
checklist when we first started.
We used to have paper.
15,
they worked well
years ago.
They worked well too.
Yeah.
But now it's all online, and he gets reminders, and the agents get reminders, and the seller gets emails. It is a high level moving piece, like down that line.
And the cool thing with the brevity system and the place system is it's complete transparency. The seller has access to everything going on. The agents have access to everybody.
Get their own dashboard.
Everybody involved in the transaction has information on what's going on day to day to move the sale to success.
They say real estate agents, what stops them sometimes from moving forward in their careers or in their daily accomplishment, their goals, or moving toward it, is putting out all the fires of real estate. So you wake up in the morning, you check your email, you have all these fires for the file. So if you've got 5-6 things moving, contracts pending, and you have listings coming up, and you have appointments to show, and you have to meet photographers and all these things, that adds up, and you can't possibly get it done in a day. And if I had somebody that I knew for sure knew how to put out the fires, knew who to contact for the fires, knew to reach out to me only if it was something that was negotiation. They don't negotiate on your behalf. They don't touch base with the other side of the party. They don't touch base with the agents, really. So it's really taking off all the fires. If I needed to make sure we met an inspector at a certain point, we have somebody to go out there and meet an inspector. If a door needed to be unlocked, we have somebody to unlock a door. If you forgot that the pictures were set for today, we have somebody to, so it's just guiding you to get to your career. But also what that does for the seller is they don't have to wait on my schedule to be free for me to be able to help them. It's like 6 people doing the job of one person.
Right. That's the benefit of hiring a team.
Correct. I know a lot of sellers have an issue or concern. Sometimes buyers too have concerns with, well, if I work with a team, I'm going to be tossed around between all these people. That's not how it is.
That's old school teams.
You are with
the
one
team.
depending on the stage of the process that you are in. You are with one designated. You have your agent, that is your designated person, and then you have the admin that corresponds to that task. So if you're under contract, you're only dealing with your agent and the transaction coordinator. That's your team. That's it. You don't have to see all the behind the scenes of everybody else and everything that has to happen as well. There are more people involved, but your points of contact, it's not confusing at all. No. It's your agent and their administrative staff.
And I think the big benefit to a seller or a buyer is that you still have a sales team working behind your agents to sell our properties. So you're not hiring one agent. You're hiring 10 agents and 3 administrative staff members, or 15 or 20, no matter how high we scale the team. You have a whole group of agents working on your behalf to find a buyer for your home.
Right. And if I told you SEO and geotagging and keywords and Google ads and local services, you're like, I don't either.
Well, that goes over most realtors' heads, most in addition to sellers' heads. They're not
you
going to
can put a house online. Yes, everybody, it goes in the MLS and it feeds. That's the basic level. But then which I don't really know what it necessarily is. I just know that those are the things you need to do to get the properties the most exposure.
And we have hired to do that?
Well, he used to be a website designer.
Yeah, right.
So he knows everything about everything that has to go with getting websites seen. So he's not designing our website only. He is taking every property and creating a whole process around the property. The pictures themselves are geotagged. If you know what that means, that's cool. But I don't know what that means. I just know that it gets found to he brings it down to the local. So it kind of, in my mind, quiets out all the social media crazy around it, and it brings attention to, if they're looking for this in this area, then they're going to see it, they're going to find it, and it's going to be on the top of their searches. So even our head administrator, whatever you want to call him, our ops director, he makes sure that every property, so it goes from the listing manager, and then he oversees the marketing funnel, he oversees the social media, he makes sure the sellers get the most exposure at the best exposure, everything gets specialized at the highest level, and the agents are able to become now really just real estate agents. They can just focus on selling your house.
Yeah. And it gives the sellers properties an unfair advantage in the real estate market. And when you're selling a property where the market's shifting and it's starting to soften and it's turning towards a balanced to buyer's market, you have to have that unfair advantage.
And you know, another advantage of being on a team and just doing more volume of business, and it's not just, it's great for, you know, your pocketbook, but it is, you get exposed to so much more properties, people, processes, fires, issues. Like you get to see, you get so much more experience in a shorter amount of time that makes you exponentially better. It develops your skill set faster than you would if you were selling 6 to 8 houses a year. But if you're selling 6 to 8 houses a month over the year, how much more experience do you have as an agent when you are able to just focus on growing yourself as a real estate agent, as a realtor, and not having to worry about building the admin side, because that's really not what you need to be doing.
Well, that was my biggest attraction to why we joined Place, and the excitement from the sales perspective, which is my niche, not the administrative staff side. That's your thing in the ops. Was the sales staff, that I could truly start training these agents on how I built a multi-million-dollar real estate business. And they can essentially plug into our business and scale their business to a multi-million-dollar sales business.
You know, I still get impressed by some of the sales stuff that you figure out, and that I'm like, look at that, that's another, I can't. But when it comes to a process or something that comes up and we need to figure that out, I was like, don't touch it. Don't touch it.
I tell you what we need, and then you bring me back the solution.
Let me see what we need to do, because sometimes you get in there like, let's just do this. And that's just not, it is not like that. You cannot, it's not willy-nilly. It's people's houses, their homes, even buyers. I always say we talk a lot about sellers, but the buyers, I think, is even more emotional because they're the ones who are about to make that transition. So it is very important that we know what's going on and that we bulletproof it so it doesn't fall apart if that's really what they want. If they want to get out, we have to figure out how to get them out. But moving the transactions through and making sure, but also even for agents. So any way you look at it, we need to make sure that if the way you're structuring it, the way we're structuring the business makes it to where it's the most beneficial for all parties involved. So even the admin, they enjoy getting a process done and putting it together. And it's like a puzzle. It's like putting a puzzle together.
Well, that's what gets them excited. That's why we hired them and not salespeople to do that.
Well, my brain works in puzzles. You do like high,
big
you
thinking.
know. So when you're trying to get high thinking things into little pieces, it doesn't necessarily
correlate.
Right. And I'm like, I don't want to see it at big top. Tell me what you need down here. So that's part of as well having the dynamics of, or the two sides of the brain, I guess, because we are opposites. That helps also, I think, make the team more cohesive and a little bit more complete.
So why would a agent want to join a team like ours? Why would they want to be a part of Place?
I remember when I first got into real estate, same thing. I took a 2-week course. It wasn't even a full week. It was like 3 weekends in a row or something I had to go. And so then they're like, and there you go, here's your license. Now go sell some houses. And I was like, what? Also, you know, you think people are going to knock on your door to come help you, to come have you sell them.
It's sort of a dog eat dog business.
It's,
you know,
it's
a competition.
Hard. But also, I mean, I know now I wouldn't go find a new agent and be like, hey, you want to help me in real estate? You need somebody who knows what they're doing. So you have to learn to develop a skill set, which you can only develop by selling. And if you're not selling anything, you're not developing your skill set. So it's like a catch-22 with the team. So then, you know, when you approached me to join the team and I had a meeting, the time it was my team leader, Michelle, and I was like, I feel like I'm selling out if I join a team. And that was my biggest thing, is like, am I giving up on myself by trying to go to a team who's going to feed me these leads and who's going to give me the business that I couldn't get on my own?
Well, that's a typical thing we get with a lot of realtors. It's an ego thing. I work on a team. No.
Well, let me tell you, first of all, you didn't feed us anything.
Yeah, right.
You paid for services.
I gave you the platform to succeed at the highest level and plug into the system that I had built and I had learned from top agents in the area to be the most successful version of yourself. And I held your hand a little bit and coached you. And that's about it.
We were exposed to more resources, so we were able to find buyers and sellers and that way. So we learned the business that way. But what the side or the team thing for me was the amount of support that you get. And I'm not saying that everybody needs to join a team and stay with a team for 10 years. Sometimes, I mean, I'm still out.
Yeah.
After
been here
being
over
in the
10
business,
years.
after being in the business for, I think I was on the team 3 or 4 years. I was like, I would never do a solo agent. Never, ever, ever. I'm not interested. I don't want all of it. I don't want I don't want to worry about the signs and the paperwork and like all of that. I don't want to have to do it. I want it taken off my plate.
Even the truth on my end, if I had to go back 20 years and real estate was advanced as it is now and real true teams were operating the way they were operating now, I would have joined a team and I would have just scaled my business.
We did just
and
join
gone
a team.
Right, we did. We just joined Place,
and it's been
which
the
is
best thing that's
basically
ever happened.
Place is basically a bigger team than me.
Right.
And they've given me the resources and the right people and the high level of thinking and the interaction with top realtors in the country
Even
that I can't get anywhere else. So I have joined the team after 20
even
years.
Even as skilled as I thought we were.
Yeah.
And this is
like,
me,
we were like scratching the surface 10 years ago.
Like I am becoming even more honed in on things that like, oh, this is because also things are changing. And if you're not changing with them, we know that. Like if you can't send a fax anymore. So when people say, I'm going to fax you, you're like, what are you doing? So there's things in real estate now that are almost obsolete and that you can't do. And this is taking us to the next level. But just the idea, also a solo agent, you know, I think the commission split and all that is where people get hung up on. So if you're going to pay to run your business, why not pay and know that the business is being ran at a high level? Because that money has to go in. You're going to have to get signs. You're going to have to get lock boxes. You're going to need business cards. You're going to need to get exposure online. You're going to need an admin staff. You're going to need to get folders. You're going to need to get, you know, all of the things that you need to just run your business at a basic level. You're going to need to do it anyway.
All the pain and learning that I had to go through to build a successful real estate team in 2010 to 2020, I wouldn't wish on anybody again, especially when the playbook's already there.
Yeah, I was very much, well, I think I'll give him 50% or whatever of my commission to help me grow an actual business instead of keep 100% of not anything. I was doing no business. I mean, I was a small fish in this big, you know, going up against all these other agents or teams that had businesses or whatever, but it just gives you that step up for you to be able to launch your career because you only have to focus on being a real estate agent.
Right. Sales.
You can't just be an agent yes, we work from home, but that's not how you can't just do that. And I'm not saying that you can't do it at that level. That's absolutely acceptable. That's not what I wanted. I wanted a big career. I wanted to do big sales. I wanted to work with a lot of people. And the only way to do that for me was to join a team who would take off 80% of the stuff that I didn't want to deal with, even though I created all those systems. 80% of that was taken off, but now I could just sell. So,
well, you didn't learn that until you got into sales and you realized what your strengths truly were. And as my business developed and grew, there was opportunities within the business. That's the thing with Place. There's opportunities within our company that people can plug in, find a niche that they fall in love with, and scale their business that direction, which I think is just phenomenal.
Yeah, I think joining a team was probably the only reason I'm still in real estate is because I had a team the whole way through and I didn't have to go through all those growing pains or get to a stagnant point in my business. I probably wouldn't have had any growth because I would have been doing the same things and then try to figure out the next step. And then it takes a toll on you and then life happens. And I was a single mom for a while. So those are all the things that I needed the team, the support of a team. It felt like almost a safety net for me. Like I can't fall any further than the net, right? It's going to catch me and propel me. And it did. And I did really well with the career because the team was there.
Tell me, an agent joining our team as a partner, as a Place partner on the Williams team, what does that look like? What does the day in the life of a realtor look like? What value is there other than being on a team and having an administrative staff? What is the value of being a part of Place? The different designations you can get, the mastermind groups, the coaching, the training, if you really want to have a growth mindset.
Right. So within Place, there's a lot of different trainings that you can really, there's a training calendar and you can select what you want depending on where you are in your business and what you want to focus on. But so for me, my day, everything I live by the calendar. So Mondays I have a call and it's mostly about growing your business and becoming a better leader and those things. Tuesdays, there's an ops call and that's about different processes that they're rolling out and the newest, best things that you guys could do within the Place platform or the Brevity platform or how to run the back end, the operations side. And then Wednesdays, there's just calls. Thursdays, there's another call for women in the business. And so you could just talk about perspectives like that. Fridays, those trainings for the entire partners, everybody is,
Growth
I
and
feel like it's
leadership.
growth and mindset. It's really refreshing every time. And Chris Suarez typically leads those. Every time he's talking about something, and I was like, because we listen to him together, and I'll look at you and go like, he's talking to you.
Yeah, right.
But he's always talking to us. Like, it's happening to everybody across the board. So it's not like we're sitting there and being coached around things that aren't happening. It's the real market that's happening right now. It's what the sellers need. It's what the buyers need. It's what I need to, like any athlete, it's what you need to refine your business, your skills, your attitude, your mindset in order to be able to take people and get them to their real estate goals. Because if you're not doing well, you have no business trying to help people figure out their life. You know that.
Tell me about Tuesday's call. Like, who are the type of people that Ben Kinney and Chris Suarez bring in, because he's dealing with the largest real estate team in the world right now, currently. And we're a part of that. We're one of the 250, 300 operators now with the company. Tell me the type of people he brings in.
So he has...
Like this Tuesday.
And so like this was a special call, but they'll bring in special guests.
Yeah, they bring in special
conversations.
guests because we're a part of place in this platform, and we're one of the top startup companies in the world. I think we're ranked number 30 out of 100. And this thing's going to go big, and it's going to go, on the stock market at some point. Thing that we actually have ownership. This is our company. I'm a part of this company. He brings people like Brendan Burchard, who I am like head over heels. I've loved this guy forever. He wrote a book called The Charge. He's wrote multiple books. He coaches like elite athletes, elite business people. He just calls them in on a call. And we have an hour sitting with Brendan Burchard on a Zoom call with 200 other operators. I mean, he's just sitting there rattling off. He brings these people from all over the world that are top tier business minds, top tier financial minds, top tier real estate minds across the board. People that you want to be associated with and you want to listen to, and you spend hundreds and thousands of dollars to go here. We get them all the time. He brings them in. They, like this week, we were sitting there and growing this business and getting restarted and coming out of retirement again. It was literally like Brendan was speaking to me. And then I talked to one of my place partners on my team, right here in the New Orleans area. And she said the same thing. She said she had a coaching call with you Monday. And it was like eye-opening.
Literally the same conversation.
And the same conversation came up on Tuesday with Brendan. And it was like a sledgehammer to the face, like, wake up. Like, you can do this.
Part of it is affirming also that when you think you're going through it alone, it's a lot heavier to handle. But when you hear that it's across the nation or it's the entire company, and it's not they're just saying, this is what you should be feeling right now, and we know it sucks. It's like, this is what you should be feeling right now, and here's how you fix it. Here's how you address it. Here's how the sellers need to be handled. Here's how the buyers need to hear it. Here's what the lenders needs to, they teach you how, if in any business, right? Continuing education is a thing, but like, if you go to a doctor or a nutritionist or anything in any other field, you want them to be at the forefront of what's going on right now in the market, not what they learned, not the pyramid, the food pyramid that we learned 30 years ago. If your doctor's still telling you eat like that, you're like, I don't know about that.
Doesn't work anymore.
Right. If your agent is still trying to fax me something, I don't know about that. Like,
need to get out of the business.
We just need to figure out, and that's what I think Place is doing. It's reinvigorating, but also it's like, it is teaching me real estate all over again.
Because we're only networking with the top tier, most brilliant real estate minds in the industry. You don't become an operator with Place just because you sell a few houses, just because you've been in the business 20 years. There's an interview process. They look at your P&L. They want to know how many houses you sell, how long you've sold those number of houses, your track record of success. They go back and talk to other people to make sure they're bringing the right people into this organization. And we were just blessed enough to be one of them.
And, it's always fun to hear about goals that we've hit or records that we broke. And yes, the numbers are exciting. The accolades are nice. However, the idea of like, just when we look back on it, like we have helped so many people buy and sell houses. We have seen terrible transactions. We have seen the terrible side of human nature. We have seen the beautiful side. We have seen people, we go visit them and they've, oh my God, I can't believe you did that to this house. Like it is just a beautiful business that you need to actually be part and learn, though, to get people to the part where they can go like, oh, I'm so glad I sold it. I'm so glad I live here now. For us to get it to the part where they can relax and release and not have to worry about it, I have to know what's going on. I have to up my skill set. It sounds like it's just it is a fun business sometimes. Sounds like it's easy to just sell houses, and it can be, yes. but you need to know what you're doing. You need to know it is imperative for me to stay upfront with my clients. It is imperative for me to know the most about what's going on, to stay current, to have the best vendors, to know the top transaction processes, to all these things, so that, yes, the high volume of numbers that we talk about is nice to just say, but in my mind, it's always like, I have that much experience. This is my experience, not just
And with
my
that experience
goal or
comes
my
wisdom, and wisdom is what's the game changer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think most people have a lot of equity in their house still because the prices haven't plummeted and they're on a low fixed interest rate.
How did it feel to be like in the seller's shoes preparing your house?
I have a rental property here in Mandeville, where I live currently, and I have a tenant in there the last couple of years, and I've tossed around the idea of selling it again. We're either going to fix it up and rent it out again, or possibly fix it up and sell it. So I went into the property, and it was sort of the flip side of me consulting with the seller about things that needed to be done. And I guess it's good that I do deal with a lot of sellers, and I have to remember to remove the emotion. I can understand why sellers get so involved and so emotionally attached, and I'm not going to do this. I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't do that. I have to be smart about pricing. I can't get caught up on getting this high price, knowing from what I coach my clients to do, to price it appropriately, or it won't sell, or it's going to sit there and we have to reduce the price. And then I looked at the house through the eyes of a buyer. That's what I always coach sellers to do. Flip the script a little bit. This is your house. It's no longer your home. It's now a commodity. It's entering into a competition, and how are we going to enter that competition? And I found myself talking to myself in that dialogue when I was walking the property before my tenant moved out.
Like checking yourself to think about it?
Well, yeah, because I have to say, okay, I coach these people, I consult these people to sell their house a certain way, yet I'm fighting myself because I have this inner emotion to get the most amount of money and do this, but not do that,
Right.
Negotiate with this, but not negotiate this. So it gave me a refreshing view because I've bought a house in the last 5 years, but I have not sold one of my properties in a long time. I usually buy and hold. That's the name of the game. You buy and hold, let the equity, let somebody else build wealth for you. And that's what I've been doing since 2005. I've owned this house in Quail Creek in Mandeville, but I now have a different sense of talking to people because I was talking to myself in my head on what a seller would, because it's a different dynamic.
Yep.
But we've chosen some things that are going to be fixed. We're going to have the house hit the market in September, and I'm going to price it appropriately. I'm not going to overprice it $10,000 or $20,000 when I know it should be priced here if we want to move it.
To get the money back from your repairs.
Yeah. And, I know that typically the repair cost, it's not a dollar for dollar return ever, but yet it still has to be done. So I'm going to price it appropriately. I'm going to do the repairs, and I'm going to get it sold in 30 days. And I'm going to take some of my own advice and remove my ego, like I coach my clients to do, and realize we're entering into a competition. It's a commodity. I know what we do works. It's effective, and it'll sell it for top dollar. And the market dictates everything. Correct. And if it doesn't sell after 2 or 3 weeks, I have 3, 4, 5, 10 showings, we're overpriced because I'm not going to dump more money into a depreciating asset. So we'll have to adjust the price after 2 or 3 weeks if it doesn't happen. But I'm pretty sure I'm going to price it aggressive enough to get it sold in the first 2 to 3 weeks. It's a subdivision that turns over quickly. It's in a price point around $300,000, which is still a hot market in Mandeville. And I'm going to do the appropriate things as far as repair items that need to be made in order to sell it for the number I want. So I'm going to take a little bit of my own advice, swallow my pride, swallow my ego, and get it done the right way.
So, Mr. Seller, if we're on the market and we have no showings in the first 2 weeks, or a lot of showings and no offers,
we're being rejected by the market. We got to come down.
We are rejected by the market. How much do we need to come down?
Minimum of 3, probably 5%.
That's
so I'd have
big
to
number. Why
well, because it's not going to move the needle enough to allow me to attract a buyer. Attract a buyer that's going to buy the house. It's not going to let my marketing be more effective to find a buyer that hadn't already seen it. A $2,000 or $3,000 adjustment's not going to work. So it's going to have to be more in alignment with $10,000 to $15,000.
Could we just ask the other agent to cut their commission so that we can make up?
Well, the commission's already negotiated, and I put it in the multiple list. And I am going to offer a fair commission, a 3% commission to the co-op agent, just like I would advise my customer to do.
Correct.
You know, I'm gonna do the right thing and not try to cut corners or, listen to my head. And I think that's another reason to prove why it's so important to hire a realtor, because there are a lot of emotions, especially with a residential sale, that it's imperative that you better step in and coach me a little bit, because I may get my emotions involved. Yeah, you can't see it past your own sense of well-being.
It's one of the most intimate environments to be. It's my home, and
that's
you're going to tell me
that's reason enough to hire a realtor and pay him to
and
to
you're going to
coach
tell
you and
me
keep
that
you
it's
within
not good
margin.
enough. It is good enough. Yeah, it gets very emotional.
Yeah, certainly it does. I sense it even walking in the house that I've owned for 15 or 20 years. Nearly 20 years I've owned that house. And I could just sense, okay, I'm going to price it at this number, a higher number than I know it's going to. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to fix that.
See if we can get away without doing this.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, there is no getting away.
Right.
I know the way to do it. I've done it literally thousands of times in my 20-year career, and I just have to listen to a little bit of my own advice.
We just need to know that the buyer's expectations aren't to let you get what you want. Right. It is. Yeah, it needs to be a win-win. It needs to be fair.
For all
They're
parties
buying
involved.
Something. They have to get the best product that they're paying for.
So September 1st, the house is going on the market, and it's going to go at the right price and the right condition, and it's going to sell in 2 or 3 weeks.
Beautiful.
The right people, the right resources to give that house the unfair real estate advantage. So it's going to go up. Boom.
Nice.
Peace out.
Thanks for watching. If you liked our content, please feel free to watch more videos on our channel or by visiting www.thewilliamsteam.com. See you for more.